This week, I saw Overwatch trending on social media, which is pretty unusual these days. And when I looked up why it was trending, it was because LEGO has delayed their planned Overwatch 2 gameplay set tied to the upcoming game and are revisiting the relationship because of the ongoing problems with Activision Blizzard, all the lawsuits filed against them, their mistreatment of women, and many of the horrific stories that have come out of that company. Uh, that has put a wrench into the future plans of the game and the series. Recently, in this November, we had Overwatch 2 delayed essentially indefinitely. They didn't have a date really to begin with. It was assumed it might come out this year, but it was delayed again along with Diablo 4, and now people are expecting it at no earlier than 2023. But just taking a look back at Overwatch and kind of how far it's fallen since its release is bizarre. All of the current issues with Activision Blizzard aside, though some of these obviously may have played into what was going on behind the scenes here, it's a game that I've seen fall in a way that is so unusual in the space. Where back in 2016, this Overwatch was the first new IP that Blizzard made in a very, very long time, joining their kind of core trio of Warcraft, Diablo, and StarCraft. Uh, it had a kind of colossal debut. Everyone was extremely excited about it, and when it came out in 2016, it kind of sparked the entire kind of revival of the hero shooter, kind of from the Team Fortress era, and it won something like 100 plus Game of the Year awards back in 2016. I think the only game that won more that year was Uncharted 4. And it had a pretty healthy lifespan for at least the first few years there. But eventually, somewhere along the way, the decision was made to develop Overwatch 2. That was pretty unusual to hear because a game like this, where you're constantly kind of shuffling in new modes, new maps, new heroes, you don't really see kind of sequels in the traditional sense. Like you have League of Legends, a game that just kind of exists in perpetuity forever, and then even kind of newcomers in the space, Apex Legends, Valorant, all these games that rely on kind of adding new heroes are just sort of in this endless seasonal cycle where they keep adding new heroes, keep expanding the game kind of at baseline, and there's no plans for, Valorant 2 or Apex Legends 2 or anything like that. So Overwatch 2 always seemed like kind of a weird concept in theory. It gets even more confusing because the idea was that existing Overwatch players would just be able to carry over to the multiplayer of Overwatch 2, where they wouldn't have to pay anything. It would just sort of be like a giant patch that would change, the fundamentals of a lot of character kits. I think they knocked one person off the team from each side and introducing, a lot of changes there and some new maps and things. And then they're adding some sort of single player component that we have really not seen anything specific from the entire time this has been announced since 2019 here, where it's something like you can rerun single player missions or co-op missions over and over again and upgrade your hero in kind of unique ways there. And that's supposed to be the part you pay for. The problem has been what has been kind of sacrificed in order to make this happen. So it's not just like the current Overwatch development will just flow into Overwatch 2. They put a hard stop essentially to development of Overwatch. And eventually they just said, we are not releasing any more heroes until Overwatch 2. That was 2018 when the last hero came out for Overwatch. And we are a couple of months away from that being 4 years ago, which seems almost too absurd to be true, but it is. And we've seen just development shift entirely to Overwatch 2, and yet just that game continually push back and push back and push back to the point where we don't know where it's going to be. So the end result is that we have an Overwatch scene that has just gone stale for not just a few months, but years. And this is a space where we constantly have new seasons shuffling in from all these competitors, where development on these games simply never stops. So in Activision's effort to come up with a sequel with a 2 on it that they could probably sell, a $60 box copy of, they essentially just killed Overwatch for an indefinite period of time. There's nothing to say that it can't be revived, when Overwatch 2 gets here. It's just that between the current state of Blizzard and how much interest has fallen off over the past few years with Overwatch itself, it has been kind of set up to fail and has been put in this very awkward position where half of it is kind of just an extremely large, reworking of multiplayer, and the other half is this addition of single player that we have really no details about and no knowledge of how that's going to go, but it is not going to be like a traditional MMO campaign or anything of that scale. So it's just a very strange situation to see how much Blizzard has kind of squandered all the goodwill that Overwatch had when it first debuted. This really kind of colorful, vibrant world full of these characters that were easy to like. And it has just been utterly, I would say, replaced almost entirely by Apex Legends. Apex Legends is the game that, to me, has sort of filled the void of Overwatch in pretty much this exact stretch of years where Overwatch has stopped development of new characters, whereas Apex Legends is still releasing a new hero every season, adding to its lore, adding to its world, changing the map around, pretty much all of the things that Overwatch is not doing. And yes, one is a battle royale, one is a hero shooter, but Apex expanded. They have different modes and things now, so it's kind of wild to see just what Overwatch has done over the past few years, and it kind of speaks to the ineptitude of management over there. Obviously, the kind of big name around Overwatch, Jeff left a long time ago now, and ever since, like, the series has just been kind of aimless without a rudder completely. I have no idea what we will see in 2022. All that we have seen so far is the game just continually kind of showing, like, here's the rework of, X or Y champion, and they have like a slightly different haircut, and then they've redesigned a lot of their moves and things like that. But again, like, all that does is reinforce the idea of, like, why did this need to happen in the first place? Why couldn't this have been just an ongoing series of patches to update these characters along the while, adding new characters at the same time? And we have still really no clear indicator of what the single player half of this game is going to be. We've just seen kind of the barest bone structure of that, where we've seen, a lot more from Diablo 4, and that is supposedly even further away. So Overwatch 2 remains a mystery, and Overwatch itself kind of remains one of the biggest tragedies of this kind of past generation in terms of what I would consider a deeply squandered IP. See what 2022 brings, but probably not much, and we might be having to talk about 2023 instead.